Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a refreshing tea break. We are now ready for the final session of the day titled Public Health and Innovative Foods, which will be presented by our esteemed national speaker, Dr. Monica Punia. Dr. Monica Punia is a senior official at the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, currently serving as Deputy Director, with a strong academic foundation and a research portfolio that has garnered over 1,500 citations. Dr. Punia is widely recognized for her contributions to microbiology, food safety, and public health nutrition. Her career reflects a seamless integration of scientific rigor and regulatory leadership. At FSSAI, she has been instrumental in shaping and implementing policies that uphold food safety standards across the country. Her work supports the authority's mission to ensure safe and wholesome food for all citizens, and she actively engages in capacity building initiatives, stakeholder consultations, and scientific panel deliberations. Dr. Punia's research interests span microbial biotechnology, functional foods, and the interface between nutrition and public health. She has collaborated extensively with national and international institutions, contributing to peer-reviewed publications and knowledge exchange platforms. Her commitment to evidence-based policymaking and innovation in food systems make her a valuable voice in India's evolving food safety landscape. We are honored to welcome Dr. Monica Punia to the Gyan course on food security, nutrition and innovations. Her presence enriches this academic dialogue, bridging the gap between scientific inquiry and regulatory practice and inspiring future leaders in food safety and nutrition. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. That was so excellent introduction. Thank you so much. So, do I start with my presentation?
Yes, ma'am, you can start.
Hello. I'm audible. I can start with my presentation.
Yes, ma'am, you can begin the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is visible, right? Okay. So today we will be talking about the public health and innovative foods. Uh, this quotation is very well, you all are very well versed with it, that let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So it's very well said by the Hippocrates that let me know what you eat and I will let you know what you are. It means the food that we eat today, it can very well act as a medicine for us. Now, if I talk about the public health nutrition, the main concern about public health today would be the ever increasing population. Now, the ever increasing population is fine, but if I talk about the nutrition, there is, a vast difference. It's like about, if I talk about malnutrition, we have both. It's like undernutrition, that is micronutrient deficiency in the lower level, and the overnutrition that is mostly found in the urban region. So what would be the best policy that can be taken up to cater these challenges? The best way would be the innovative foods. Now, what are these innovative foods? These are the novel food products. It can be a new ingredient, it can be a new additive, it can be a new processing aid, it can be a
Monica
new
ma'am,
methodology. Yes.
ma'am, please share it in full screen if possible, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I tried to do that, but then I was not able to go up and down.
Okay. No,
So that is why.
yes, ma'am. I think
Okay.
it will
I'll
work.
try. I'll
Yes,
try. I'll try.
it works, ma'am. It works. No issues. Thank you.
Yeah, it works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm sorry for that. Okay. So now these novel food products, actually, as I said, it can be an ingredient, it can be an additive, it can be a new methodology, it can be a new carrier, it can be a new enzyme, anything that is not having a standard, but a new product, a new innovation, a new novel food product that is found, it can cater the need for the public health nutrition. Now, How is it going to address the challenges? What are the new innovative foods in the market today? We will be going in detail in the upcoming slides. So, see, this was my problem actually. So sorry on that. I'm not able to go on my next slide. Okay. So if I'll go very much brief about the current status of public health, because I think in your earlier lectures, many of the experts must have spoken about it. The global obesity crisis, as I said, there are in the malnutrition there are two important things, that is undernutrition and overnutrition. So if I talk about overnutrition, which was the theme in our Global Food Regulatory Summit also this time, that was nothing but obesity. So the global obesity crisis is over 1.9 billion adults. They are overweight today worldwide. And out of these 650 million, they are clinically obese. Now, this epidemic, if I say the diet related conditions like diabetes, they also affect around 422 million globally. Heart disease, it remains the leading cause of the death worldwide. Nearly 690 million people, they go hungry because of these, and micronutrient deficiencies globally. Okay. So these were the challenges that I was already talking about. And if you can see on my right and your left, is it visible, I guess? Yeah. So we are talking about the whole food chain, where I'm talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. SDG is given over here. What is SDG? It is the Sustainable Development Goals that are adopted by the United Nations member states. And in India, Niti Aayog is the nodal point actually, who monitors and who caters with all the programs that are going under that. So if we can see, if I start from the pre-harvest or the pre-slaughter till I go to the consumer where we are eating the food in the household, or it is going to an outlet to a food service, we can see how much of the food is lost. So this is a very good diagram that is given over here. So a significant amount of food is wasted daily, while on the other side, if I see, there are millions who are actually lacking access to a nutritional meal. The other side, as I said, we have the obesity challenge. Like if I go through the analysis and the global trend, by 2050, there will be 3.8 billion adults, like more than half of the adult population will either be overweight or obese, or 746 million children and adolescents will be affected. So this is like, and you can see the age, I don't know whether it is visible here. The age group is mostly between 5 to 14 years or 15 to around 20 years. So this is the biggest challenge. And the other challenge we'll be discussing in the upcoming slide, how we can have, address the global food security, how we can have sustainable, environment friendly food system, how we can address these public health concerns, and what are the other challenges that, if I talk about safety, how we can have a contaminant, adulterant free, wholesome food for the nation. So, as I said, with my quotation in my second slide, how much your food plays a role in your life. The foremost thing is, I was talking about, diabetes, her birth. I guess everybody must have been talking, but it's actually a lifestyle disorder. Why do I call it a lifestyle disorder? Because you can very well address it not only by physical exercises, doing meditation, all that, but the core thing that comes is the diet that you are been eating. So disease prevention, 80% of the heart disease, strokes, diabetes 2, type 2 diabetes, it can be prevented by the food, the diet that you are taking. It should be the nutrition that you're having. It should be so balanced in your body. The diet that you eat, it actually increases your immune function. If your immunity is strong, of course, you are able to fight with these diseases. The mental health connection. Everybody is sitting here listening to me, having a conversation. I have been looking at the earlier lectures where I can see that the students were interacting very good. They were talking about their state, what are the conventional, procedures that take place at their states, and what best can be done. And I felt very good. Now this is the connection that you are able to make with the one who is speaking, or if I am able to make with you. This is why, because I have a good mental health. And this is also, so your mental well-being very much depends on the diet that you are eating in your everyday life. And of course, if I talk about the economy, it would be a big burden if I talk about the healthcare cost that it impacts our country. Because of changing the slide, I'm going a little slow. So now I had been talking about the food, wholesome food safety. Now, how it is being regulated, what is there, what are the standards that you need to follow when I'm talking about nutrition, I'm talking about a wholesome food, or I'm talking about an innovative food. What are the standards? What are the regulation that needs to be followed? So it all comes under just one umbrella, that is the Food Safety and Standard Act. That is the act we all need to follow when we are framing the standards, when we are coming up with the regulation. So if we see, I should say now we are in 2025, like much ahead than when the idea was born in 1916. We are much ahead of that, but still we are standing somewhere where we need to maintain the system that had this whole genesis. So this idea was born somewhere in 1916, and then you can see this slide that the first legislation that was notified was in 1954. That is the PFA, that is Prevention of Food Adulteration Act. I guess all of you must be very well versed with that. And then in 2004, there were, the first joint parliamentary committee on the pesticide residue. It suggests that the consolidation of there were various legislations which were fragmented and which needed to be at one place because there were multiple laws. So in 2006, integrated food law that was enacted, that is the Food Safety and Standard Act 2006. In 2008, FSSAI was set up, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which is the apex regulatory body for providing safe and wholesome food to the nation. It was institutionalized. And at that time, there was a scientific committee and only 8 scientific panels, they were, working that time. In 2011, the rules and 6 key regulations that came into force. One of the most important out of them was the mandatory licensing of the food businesses and the import clearance system introduced. Now, if I say licensing, why do I say it is that important? Because anything, you just, even when in the earlier years, I am being much elder to you, but yeah, in my earlier years, I could, what I knew about food was, if I just pick up a packet of chips or any other a biscuit packet, if I pick it up and if I see, I can just see that there is LIC. It's a license number and a 13-digit digit is being made over there, and very beautifully FSSAI, that logo is there. So what do I understand is, okay, this is a logo of FSSAI and the food that I would be consuming or the packet of chips that I would be consuming is safe for me to consume it. That is the only thing that I knew about FSSAI, or that they are the licensing authority. They give license and they make the food safe. But it's about the license of the premises only. The food that is inside There are many other things that counts too. So how did the process go forward? So in 2012, there were NABL accredited laboratories. Now, as I said, how do I authenticate the food? The chips that I had been eating, they are fine. So they need to be tested. They need to be seen whether they are, free of contaminants. They have the good quality. They are free of adulterants. There is no adulteration of palm oil if they are not writing it on the label. So everything, how you are going to come to know all that about. So this would be through the NABL accredited labs. So that came into force in 2012. In 2013, as I said, the FSSAI logo and the license number that was mandated on the label of the packaged food. So that actually increased the visibility of FSSAI, the visibility or the awareness of the consumer that, as I said, that my food is safe. Then in 2016, we adopted a collaborative multi-stakeholder approach because as I showed you the whole chain of the food system. Everybody has a role to play. As a consumer, you have a big role to play that you need to, check the packet, whatever is written on the label. If I am diabetic, I need to see how much is the amount of sugar because I had gone through one of the lecture where there are some sugar-free products also available in the market. I need to see what is written on my label. So an aware consumer, he is informed. You need to have your informed choices. The FBO, the food business operator, who is licensed is a bigger one. Registered is the a street food vendor when we are just going and eating a chaat or golgappe over there. So even he is registered with us, so he need to be self compliant. He need to see what kind of sanitation is the personnel are carrying, unka nails theek hai ya nahi. Like small things, he need to be self compliant. The FBO needs to be self compliant. So this was enabling the self compliance, and we have a system that is FOSTAC. If you go and visit on the FSSAI's website, you can go through each one of the portal and you can see. So these are the trainings. For example, there are 25 personnel at one FBO at one outlet. On top of that 25, at least there should be one supervisor who is trained. And then these 25 who are trained will be training the other 25. So this is just one example where we do very good FOSTAC trainings, and it's all sector wise, like for milk and milk products, for oil, for manufacturing, for retailers, we have different trainings. Then, as this was marking the 10 years of law, because it came in 2006 and now I'm talking about 2016. So 10 citizen centric initiatives that was initiated in 2016, and one of the most important out of that was the fortification standards that came into force, like in food fortification standard in 2016. And I guess earlier lectures had covered about food fortification. In 2017, we had Infolnet system. What is Infolnet? It's actually a network of laboratories for the FBOs who are licensed with FSSAI. They have to go for mandatory testing every 6 months, and they have to upload the test reports on the portal. Other than that, any of the laboratory, any of the food testing laboratory who is NABL accredited and FSSAI notified, they have to upload all the test reports on the Infolnet portal. So now we have a big system where we very well know all the data, all the food testing data of our country, what all non-compliances are there, which area is affected, because geographically we are all very different. Somewhere it is very humid, somewhere it is too much dry. So everything at one place is there under the Infolnet. Then we have a uniform inspection and sampling system, that is the phosphorus. Now we have that licensing system where regular inspections are being carried out. Our food safety officers, they go and they collect sample. It's not about we are getting a complaint and so we are going and picking up a sample, or it's part of the licensing that we are going and doing inspection. No, it's a regular process. And these enforcement exercises, these surveillance exercises, these are being directed from the headquarters, and these are being taken care by the states, by the different states, the FDA centers, the food safety centers, which are available at the states. And everywhere we have a national food laboratory, we have referral laboratories. You must be knowing what is the difference between a primary laboratory or a referral laboratory. Actually, when we carry out surveillance exercises, the primary testing laboratory can do the testing samples, but if there is non-compliance being found, then it calls for enforcement. And these kind of legal samples, they are being tested in the referral laboratories. And these referral laboratories result, they are the apex one. They are the final results that are considered. And this is in 2018 that the National Food Laboratory Ghaziabad, that was actually a public-private, that's a PP model that has been formed at Ghaziabad in 2018, and later on it was emitted, and like at every state in Chennai, Mumbai, everywhere we have this kind of a laboratory. So by 2018, we had a very strong system of laboratories, of licensing system, of some important regulations. And this process continued till 2000. It is ongoing. Of course, it's every day we are working on it. And to date, if I talk, we have 28 regulations out of that, technical as well as administrative regulations in place right now. Okay. I'm struggling to go on my next slide. So as I said, the act, what are the objectives? As I said, it consolidated multiple laws under one single point, that is FSSAI. FSSAI was established, which lays down science-based standards for the food products. It regulates the whole food chain, like we would regulate the manufacturing, the storage, the distribution, the sale, the import, so that we ensure availability of safe and wholesome food for the human consumption. Next body, that is the Food Authority. So both these bodies, they give scientific opinion for the development of the standards. In addition to these statutory bodies, we have some non-statutory bodies, because as I say, we try and harmonize a standard at the international level. That is nothing but the codex. So we have different codex coordination groups, CCG groups, that are working towards it. The national codex contact point is FSSAI in India. And other than these statutory bodies, that is the scientific panel, the scientific committee, these are the non-statutory bodies, which includes the expert committees, the CCGs, which actually they also, on the basis of risk assessment, they assist in framing the standards. Now, there is one network of scientific cooperation for food safety and applied nutrition, that is NETSCOFEN, where we give uh, fundings to the research organization or such universities where research is going on, or we have PhD and postgraduate students who can have good projects, who can actually, help us to come up with the standards. So these scientific panels, what are the scientific panels, and I'll go in detail in the next slide. They give the draft recommendation which goes to the scientific committee, where the scientific committee is again, they give the recommendations to the food authority. So food authority would be the apex body who comes up with the standards. So the scientific panels, they are constituted under the section 13 of this act for developing the standards or for giving scientific opinions. To date, we have 21 scientific panels, where 10 are horizontal panels and 11 are vertical. Vertical, it means as per category, and 10 horizontal panel, it means what all testing, methodology, fortification, labeling that goes around these 11 vertical panels. The scientific committee, it is constituted by the Food Authority, and that comes under section 14 of the Act. The scientific committee can have working groups. For example, we have scientific panel, but there is some trust area that needs to be addressed. So a small working group can be formed, which can actually take up that agenda. And once that is catered, once that is done, the working group can be abolished. So these are the horizontal panels that I was talking about, and these are the vertical panels as per the categories. This is the process where the standards is being made at FSSAI. So initially, the draft proposal for the standard is given, which is being reviewed by the scientific panels. The draft recommendation goes to the scientific committees, which is addressed, which is being deliberated, which is being discussed in the scientific committee. And at any level, you can see the arrows, and at any level, any change, any data, any correction is required. It can again go back to the panel, from the committee, from the authority, from any place. This is being framed. They are being deliberated on the basis of the risk assessment that is being done at the panels. Then after the scientific committee has reviewed it, it goes to the food authority, which is finally being approved by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. During this process now, if you can see on the left, my left and your right, it is being approved by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This draft notification is open for the public for 60 days and parallelly for WTO comments as well. Right? Then once this 60 days is done, whatever comments we receive, they are again reviewed by the scientific panels, the scientific committee, and the same process will follow till the food authority. When all this is done, then it goes for legal vetting to the ministry. And if I talk about the final process, it is after the legal vetting is done, it goes to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare again for the final notification, which becomes the Gazette notification, the legal document, which is then given on the portal that it is effective for from this date. So after the panels, as I said, Gazette notified, it becomes a regulation. These are the 21 regulations. Actually, we are showing only the technical regulations over here. Other than that, we have 7 more, which are the administrative one, salary allowances and all that. If you can see, I have highlighted one, that is the food safety and standards approval for non-specific food and food ingredients regulation 2017. Because in my earlier slide, and we were talking about innovation, we were talking about novel foods. So how do we come up with novel foods, or how we are able to do these innovations is all covered under this regulation. So I will give details about this regulation. If you can see, rest of the regulations are visible. That is the food product and food additive regulation, the licensing regulation. We're talking about contaminants. We talk about laboratories. We talk about the methodology. We talk about sampling analysis. So all of these regulations will actually tell you what standards are available, what need to be followed, what need to be complied on. So if I talk about approval for non-specific food ingredient, it will all be covered for the food innovation. Now, what is food innovation? We are developing a new novel food, or we are, as I said, we are using a new ingredient or an additive, or we are using a new technology, and we are doing some innovation which is actually going to improve the nutritional value. Because as I said, how we are how we would be able to cater to the needs of for providing wholesome food to the public. For that, to increase or to enhance the nutritional value, to have sustainable food system, and to have easy access, which is afforded, which can be afforded by all the people, all the consumers. Then it can have various categories, like you must have talked about fortified food products, you must be talking about functional food, you must be talking about some alternative proteins, for example the lab grown meat, or some plant proteins that are being used nowadays for dairy products. The main objective is to address the nutritional challenges, while it also enhances the consumer's appeal. Consumer appeal in the sense, now everybody is very well versed, the consumer is very smart nowadays. Even in my watch, or even in your watch, you can see how many steps you have been walking every day. Or if I say there is a BP monitoring system, we have a sugar monitoring system. Not only in the mobiles, we have in our watches, smart watches also. So all of the consumers, they are very well versed. They are very conscious about the diet. If my son is doing a bodybuilding exercises, he knows that he needs to have more of the protein and less of the carb. So he knows that how I need to go about it. And there would be some conventional myths, or maybe I should say there might be some ethical reasons that I cannot consume a non-veg product, so I can go for some alternative protein. So all these innovations can be done under this regulation, under this standards only. so sorry. So need of the hour is building a healthy, a sustainable food future. As I said, nutrition is the foundation. Sustainable, resilient, equitable food system are a must, so that we are able to protect our environment. We are able to cater to the climate change, the greenhouse emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions. How we are able to mitigate it, we can see in the upcoming slides. Pragmatism in policy and practice. Of course, I'm talking about the whole system, that this is the way how the standards is being prepared, and then how the regulations are being gazette notified. So of course, these approaches will surely help us for making of the policy and for the implementation. We need to have strong science-driven regulation. Now, how this is possible? A lot of risk assessment, a lot of data is being discussed, is being deliberated in the scientific panels. We have very expert members in the scientific panel who actually deliberate on the agendas, who actually come up with these standards. And of course, they have risk assessment data, and they have, some peer reviewed journals data that is available at their end. Even when we come up with such novel food products, I'll go through details of them. We need data of peer-reviewed journal. We need history of safe use of that country. We need, if they are imported, of course, we need that safe history. So everything basically is science-driven. Whatever standard are being framed, whatever regulation are being made, are on the basis of science. So as I said, globally by 2050, we need to cater food for more than 10 billion people. And if I go through, if I say that I can do that with the traditional agricultural practices, it is not possible. And if I say I don't need to have climate change, I don't need to have these greenhouse gases emission, I need to make that ethical use of land, water scarcity, soil degradation. There are so many reasons. I need to have sustainability. So how do I go about it? And of course, it should have that nutrition also in that. So how we can go through it is nothing but the novel food system that we can have in place. So what are the drivers? As I said, consumer demand. Consumer demand is, as I said, everybody, even each one of you who is sitting over there is very much aware. I would give a short example. My son, he's more worried that, oh, okay, I am aging, my husband is aging, and he feels that you need to, you are on maintenance. Of course, you don't need to have or consume that much of food, but you need a lot of protein. And if you are vegetarian, how you are going to go about it? So he must be in his 20s, but if he is that well versed, and if he thinks about it, that what should be my diet, is that's what I say is the consumer demand. So on that basis, these are some of the drivers which actually we have innovative foods in the market right now. Each one of us is aware of our health. It's not just I should not be fat or I should be thin, I should be healthy. For that, what I should eat, what kind of a balanced diet I should have. So that is the health awareness that actually drives towards innovation in the food. As I said, the sustainability concerns, how we are not, there should not be any impact on the environment. How we can cater that, okay, this is a traditional food system, but what else I can do so that that kind of a fragrance, that kind of a texture, that kind of a taste is still there, and that much of nutrition is still there that is required without affecting negatively on the environment. So there are many processing aids or carriers or processing systems. Some are AI based, some are more technology based, uh, genetically modified. So there are various advances that have come up. So all these actually are the drivers for food innovation in the country. So as I said, these are the key areas of food innovation. If I talk about personalized nutrition, for the elderly people who are not able to chew food, or somebody who is food for special dietary use like FSDU, or somebody, as I said, he's doing gymming and needs more of that protein. So as per that, we can come up with personalized nutrition. Also, why I say personalized nutrition or a personalized innovative product is because the genomics of each one of you is different. The DNA for all of you is different. Your gut, your microbiome is different. Nobody is similar. The biomarkers, like if somebody is diabetic, or somebody is hypertensive having blood pressure, somebody's lifestyle tracking, for example, I take less sleep, I know I should go for 6 hours, or I should go for the elderly needs to go minimum 6 hours, and the students like you who are still young, they need to have 8 hours of sleep. So all this, or how much stress do you take, or what kind of physical exercise do you do, or what physical activity do you do? Do you do some cycling, or you do that, all the work at home? So everybody is different, and of course my dietary habit, your dietary habit, your preferences, I would love pizza sometimes to eat. You may like normal that dal chawal to eat. So everybody has a different preference. So for that, everybody has to come up with that personalized nutrition that is required for your body. So that is one example of food innovation, because we are like everywhere, we are coming up with that kind of a nutrition or that innovation. The second one is the cultured meat. As I said, some cannot have that food, or some animal issues also. So we can have alternative protein that is nothing but the lab grown animal proteins without that traditional farming, which is nothing but the cultured meat. The third one is plant based alternatives. So we like for dairy, we come up with almond, soya, oat. So we have come up with some different alternatives. But of course, one should take care that they are not dairy products. They have not come up from the milch animals. So it should be precisely mentioned on the label that it's a dairy analog, and it's the protein is nothing but a plant based alternative, a plant protein, and not the milk fat that is being used. So there are other substitutes for meat, as I said, for the plant-based alternatives that can be used for food innovation. Now, these innovation, they represent transformative approaches to food production and consumption. Each addresses different aspects of health, sustainability, and the needs of the consumer. Here it is explained a bit about these novel, food products and what could be the sources to come up with these products. One is the plant-based alternatives. As I said, the taste is being replicated, which is actually satisfying, and it can be compared to the one that is not a plant-based alternative. The cultured meat, these are some of the animal cells that are grown in the controlled environment in the laboratory, which gives the same flavor, the same texture as we are consuming the meat. Then one more very good, I've also gone through some studies like globally, these kind of proteins or these kind of alternatives are approved in which countries. If I get time, maybe I'll display that also. So this is also one of a very good protein source, that is insects and algae. It's like very weird for us to accept it or listen to it, but yeah, these are good alternatives which are recognized as nutrient dense, sustainable protein sources, and they are gaining prominence as superfoods in the future with impressive environmental credentials. Then precision fermentation. Precision fermentation, it's also a technology which enables the creation of specific proteins, and that old fermentation technology is being used, and proteins and ingredients such as animal-free dairy and egg components are being formed. Then this is another technology, that is the 3D printing, which is again used for these personalized nutrition, as we had been talking in the earlier slide. And these are different layers of a creative culinary design and customized food with very good different textures as per each one of them. Then the genetic engineering and gene editing, it empowers the development of crops that are more resilient, that are nutrient rich, that are high yielding, and which are responsible for ethical and regulatory governance. So as I said, some emerging production and processing technologies, and I don't think so it is visible to you or not, but we have given here SDG 6, 9, 7, 3. So what is that? Actually, these are sustainable development goals. These are 17 goals, as I said, and at every place it is showing that how it is addressing that. For example, if I say SDG 12, so that is nothing but how you can have an extended shelf life, how you can have, if I talk about 9, how it can have reduced food waste. As I said, the whole chain where we are wasting so much of that food, where we can have improved food safety, that is under 3. Then reduced chemical usage, So chemical usage reduced in the sense it should be, less of that pesticides are being used on the food. Enhanced processing efficiency, reduces processing time, and reduced water usage because of the scarcity of water. So here they have given some non-thermal technologies where high pressure processing, pulse electric field, cold plasma, light-based technologies, and these are the SDGs that are being catered by this process. And of course, you can see all these treatments will contribute to the reduction in the pathogens. The microbial reduction is shown over here. So these are some of the non-thermal processing technologies which are used to preserve these nutrients and to minimize the impact on the environment. On my left, you can see the sustainable farming. Now, this picture very well depicts the vertical farming and the controlled environment agriculture. When in stakes, you can see the growth of plants. It's not just greenhouse. It is a very good, advanced version where the temperature is controlled, the humidity is controlled, the light is controlled, water is not used that much, like the land is not that much used, and still you can get nutritive food products out of it. On my right, you can see AI based different smart technologies that are being used nowadays for food processing and safety. Robotics are being used, and some digital monitoring are being used, digital analysis, artificial intelligence. So all these are different kind which enhance the traceability. Some use that GPS system in the sustainable farming system also. So they give enhanced traceability, they reduced waste and improved safety. So these are some of the upcoming technologies that are being used nowadays. So what is the regulatory framework that is in place, for these novel technologies or these novel food? As I said, it is covered under food safety and standards, non-specified food and food ingredient regulation that had come up in 2017. And it has the whole system where we give approvals for any kind of new additive that is being formed. See, to just understand it like that, there are 5 ingredients in your product, your novel product, 5 ingredients. All these 5 have standards in place. This becomes a proprietary, right? But now I have these 5 ingredients, and out of these, 2 are not having standards, right? And they give nutrition, and I am coming up with this whole product, and these 2 don't have standard. So this whole non-specified food, you have to apply under this regulation. You have to apply to FSSAI. You have to make an application for this novel food. Okay, so this now this novel food can be a new processing aid, it can be an enzyme, as I said, it can be a new additive. Out of these 5, 1 can be a new additive. Okay, it can be a new botanical, as we are saying, some plant extract. So it can be like that, which is not specified in the regulation. That is why I'm calling it non-specified food and food ingredient. So it is not specified. So it can be a new botanical, some root, shoot, or extract. It can be a new fruit or fruit-based product. It can be a new isolate of probiotic. It can be a new prebiotic that is not given in our regulation. We don't have standards for that. It can be a novel food product. As I said, you can make a combination, a composition of all of them and have a new novel food product. It can be one novel food ingredient or ingredients. It can be a processing aid, or you are doing a processing using some new novel technology that we discussed in the earlier slide. So all this is available on the FSSAI portal under ePass, and the FBOs or whosoever company wants to apply can go to the ePass portal. There is one form 1 that is available, which you have to fill, and you have to fill it with the necessary documents that are being requested over there. Then you have to submit the fees, and you have to submit it to the food authority for approval. Now, for approval of such novel food or such application, we have an expert committee in place where there is one chairperson and 4 members. So that's an expert committee of 5 people who have expertise in this area, and we have such 6 expert committees. So the application, they are received at the secretariat, that is FSSAI. These are allocated by the chairperson to the members of the expert committees, which do that technical and scientific evaluation. And they present in the meeting. They make a presentation with all peer-reviewed journal data and all the data that is being asked with this application. Then, on the basis of the scientific rationale, they give a draft recommendation, which can be a clarification that we are asking you for more documents. It can be an approval, or maybe your application is rejected. And this draft approval is the final decision is being taken by the competent authority. Now, if your application has a clarification, you will be given 30 days of time to revert back to the secretariat, or more 15 days on the basis of your request. If it is if it is rejected, then you have to apply within 1 month to the competent authority. The appellate authority is the CEO. If at all you are rejected at the appellate authority, then the reviewing authority is the chairperson, where again you have to apply in the 30 days. So you will be given specific reasons for approval, for rejection, and you can revert back on that. So this is the appeal procedure, as I said, and the timeline that is defined. This is the detailed, I have given details of the form when you are doing application for such novel food. So everything is covered. You have to just go through and tick whether it's an additive, whether it's a new botanical, what you are being applying for. These are some of the general information that is required. The category, I think I'll go through. The category, you have, if you are applying for health supplement, you have to go for 13.6. Everything, the whole category system is mentioned on the portal, which is going to help you under which product category you have to apply, so that you can, once you have got approval for this product, you can go for applying for the new license. What is the source? You have to mention that. If it's a isolate from a microbe, or it's a botanical source, or it's so whatever you are being submitting, it should be in published in peer-reviewed journal. Not any kind of open-ended publications will be taken, or where required, the expert committee can tell you that you have to come up with clinical trials, or what kind of a data more you need to submit. And if there is any kind of a claim support, for example, I say that this is very good for bone health, okay, then you have to give the supporting documents, which is of course on the basis of robust scientific studies, including human intervention, clinical studies, everything. Then you can give a prototype, a draft prototype of the label that you are going to give on that product. You have to give a declaration, and if anywhere required, the expert committee can recommend that, okay, now we are giving you a conditional approval, and you can go for market surveillance data. Like for 1 year, you can place your product in the market, come up with the data, your approval continued after this 1 year also. And we give a declaration that the information won't be shared, it will be kept confidential. These are some of the additional specific information that may be required. For example, if it's a food ingredient and you are using a novel technology, then you have to give all this data, that who would be the target group, what would be the detailed composition, what is the details of the new technology, allergenicity, toxicology studies, human history of consumption. All this needs to be submitted. If it's a new additive, you have to give that INS number, chemical name, of course, somewhere the standards that are available in the codex, it works for you. You have to give the purity, ADI specified by JECFA. You have to give the proposed level of use in the food category, coloring agent, color index, color number. If it's a new processing aid, it can be an enzyme also. Then you have to give the specification. Purity, again, enzyme activity, residual limit, everything needs to be mentioned in your application. All is mentioned over there, just that you have to provide this in your documents. If it's an isolate of a microorganism, it's a bacteria, yeast, fungi, or an algae, you have to give all this information, like what kind of a microbe it is, what is the name, what is the source, where it is being got from, whether it's from ATCC, so the agreements, whether it has a GARS status, you have to give that. And of course, the name of the regulatory agency. Some only come up with, that this product is there in the US. No, any other details of US FDA or EU, nothing is there, only just that product is there. So you have to is that how get approval. These are the categories which you can apply. Like if you are applying for, I'm also looking at the time. I know my time is over. So if you are applying under food for special medical purpose, that's taken only on the recommendation of doctor, then you have to apply under 13.3. If you are applying for FSDU, you have to apply under 13.5. And if it's a new ingredient, then you have to apply under 99. So this is my last slide. This is the portal that is available on FSSAI, where you can see the status of your application, and the whole application system is also available on the portal. And these are the other 2-3 different regulation. Once you are applying, please go through all of these also before applying, which will be actually helpful to you for making such application. So thank you so much. I think I'm dot on time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So wonderful lecture, ma'am. You have nicely explained the structure of FSSAI, and you have motivated our students also that if they are interested to develop new products, so how they can go for the approval and whole process. So with your permission, ma'am, we can take few questions from the GAN participant side. Yeah, please. Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible to you?
Yes. Yes.
So myself, Anusha, I'm MSc first year student from Nutrition Biology Department. So,
Okay.
ma'am, my question is for the certificate or license which FSSAI gives to restaurants. So, how much analysis they conduct before issuing the license or certificate?
Okay, so what, I'm audible, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have a portal. We have a portal that is Phosphorus. If you go on the FSSAI website, you can go and you can apply. There is a link where you can apply for the license. It can be, and there are different categories mentioned over there. Whether they are retailers, whether they are manufacturers. So under that category, you have to precisely see who is applying. Okay, and you have to submit all the documents. There is Tatkal licensing system also, where we have come up, uh, where the license can be issued within 7 days also. So you have to just apply it online, submit the fees, and you can get license for that.
So those are, ma'am, official initiatives that is taken by FSSAI. So what is the ground level initiatives that FSSAI takes in that case?
Okay, if you say ground level initiative, where the FBOs who are licensed with us, of course, we have that inspection system, we have that audit system, everything is in place. But if I say that for the one who are street food vendors, how we are able to see that they are, complying. So what do we do? There is a process that is registration. So we are promoting such street food vendors to at least we even have a mobile app. They can just go and register with FSSAI. And once they are registered, we have that data. We are coming up with a lot of trainings and capacity building, some thing that is required by these street food vendors. And we don't go for that stringent inspections or auditing for them, but the only thing we need is that they should be registered with us. We do the capacity building, and there are trainers with us who actually go at such places in the states and do capacity building over there, where we have also come up with street food hubs, where there are around 10 such vendors at one place, and we have made it a street food hub with the local municipal corporation and all, and we have tried and brought them under our admit by doing that.
Okay,
Yeah,
ma'am. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Payal
Hello,
Pal.
good afternoon.
I am Payal Pal,
Yeah.
MSc first
Hi.
year student of microbiology. So my
Okay.
question is, with consumer becoming more health conscious post COVID, how is FSSAI supporting innovation in food that promote immunity and gut health?
Okay. So how are we supporting? You are asking that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My whole lecture was on that only. Actually, if you talk about the microbiology, I would say that we have standards in place, and we are coming with we are doing that holistic. We are coming with that holistic approach, and we will be having more stringent standards in place. That is number one. Number two, as I said, we are open for such kind of novel technologies that is having nutrition as well as which is safe to eat, and that can be applied under non-specified food and food ingredient. That is the second thing. The third thing is we have food safety on wheels, that is being given to all states. Such remote areas, temples, the villages, the places where nobody can go and do testing for the samples, we have some for staple food, we have that testing system in those vans, and we have kits for these pathogen analysis, and these vans go to such remote places, do on the spot testing, and test for compliance of the sample. So this is these are some initiatives. But if I say under the Eat Right India umbrella, we have n number of initiatives that you can go and see on the FSSAI website, where we are trying and promoting that we all eat safe, wholesome, and eat right food. So you can visit the website and see that FSSAI is doing wonderful on that. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Very good evening, ma'am. Myself Jyoti, research scholar. So, ma'am, my question is about AI. How AI can play role in designing and regulating novel food products?
Okay, how AI can say AI can do wonderful in any sector, but if you say in food approval system, see, I had been looking for this approval system for some years now, like one of the initiative that I've been working on, and even when we go for standards, that I need standards for millets, I need standard for a chutney, and I go at the international level and we are presenting in codex at the international forum. The only problem that we face is data. We don't have data, to justify that why do we need these standards. Maybe even you must be knowing some conventional chutney, you need to have standards in place, and you are not able to do that because of data. So AI can very well help to pull all such data, maybe international, national data at one place. All that risk assessment data can be at one place, so that whenever you are applying for an approval system, you don't need to struggle for data, or you don't need to go for that peer reviewed journal, and you have everything at one place. So this is just one thing that can be useful. Otherwise, I think there are many fronts where AI can actually help in the food sector.
Yeah, ma'am. Another, ma'am, how FSSAI can speed up food approvals without compromising food safety?
Okay, so it's see, any time, even if we are speeding up, see, even if we are speeding up the process, even if we are slow, whatever we are doing, we are never compromising the food safety. As I had told you, in the application system, you must have seen what are the different steps we go through. So we just to reduce the time, what we have done at our end is we have made 6 expert committees. So every month we have these 2 to 3 meetings or deliberation that happen. In of course, the experts do that. So the timeline somewhere is being decreased. We have become fast enough because we have that online portal system. We only had that application system and only the clarification that was issued by FSSAI. But now we are coming up everything online. So the transparency is going to increase. The timeline that I say 4 to 6 months is required won't be required. I think that will be reduced by this online system, and of course, food safety. That it's the biggest challenge in the country, and we never compromise with that. It will be a fast process, more faster process, and the food safety will always be in place. So no issues on that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
One more question, ma'am. How traditional
Yeah.
knowledge guide innovation in novel food systems?
How traditional food? See, so I guess we are coming up with so many of the traditional products. Very recently, we have launched in this GFRS, we have launched a very good recipe book. And
Yes, ma'am.
last year also we
Something
had done
thali.
that. So traditional food, we are coming up with mithai, namkeen standards. Traditional food are in place. People are coming up with innovations in the traditional food, and we are taking up those applications, and they will be in the market for sure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hello, good evening.
Ma'am, I want to ask that during the festive season, the inspection by food officers increases in the market in order to avoid adulteration. So, ma'am, sometimes there are also some shopkeepers who produce genuine products. They are also harassed by the officers. So, how should they protect themselves from harassment by the officers?
Okay. So I cannot say that it's a good question, but yes, I would like to answer that because during the festive season, I won't say it's only you as a shopkeeper. There are many shopkeepers where you also very well know that what do they do. It's not milk. It's not that conventional Indian mithai. It's all, not all the time, but it's an adulterated food. Adulterated in the sense, I would say vegetable fat is being used. I can just give an example of a milk wala mithai. Okay, so now what do we do? So the states have to do surveillance. They have to do these enforcement activities just to go and cater that, okay, there is no adulterated food that goes. Now, if you say that these food safety officers, the FSO who go for sampling, they harass you. It can happen, it should not happen, but it can happen at that time. We have a portal, we have a big grievance cell where you can immediately write on that with all that proof and stuff, and of course we will come up with some kind of a reply for you that this is never repeated or you are not being harassed. So our grievance cell is it's very much stringent, and we also have a mobile app also, which I will be sharing with Dr. Tejpal. So everyone can have that app in your mobile, so that any such incident that happen, and you can become a very much aware consumer now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks.
Madam, good evening, madam.
Good evening.
My question is, when we go to these peer-reviewed journals and papers, they mention about a lot of this food additives, colorants, which can be carcinogenic and also endocrine disruptors. Madam, in India, when we get these ultra-processed foods from outside the country or made in India, do we follow the recommendations of FDA directly, or do we have any system in place to check whether a particular food additive has any health implication, whether it has a carcinogen, or how is it monitored?
So if a new additive is being applied under product approval, you are trying to ask that?
No, which we already have in place.
Right.
And I believe that I read somewhere that some of these processed food packets that are sold in this part of the world have certain food additives that the country of origin itself does not accept, and they code it that it is harmful or whatever in that categorization of risk. But
Yeah.
this side of the world they are sold. So how do we monitor such food additives entering our market?
See, the only thing is, when if it comes under product approval, of course, we see for clinical trials and we see for that international data. But sometimes, as you rightly said, it can be already available in the market, or it is already imported, and it is first of all, it cannot be imported unless there is being testing done at the port and it is non-compliant, the quality and all that. Foremost the safety parameters that matter, so it cannot be imported in your country, right? But if in India itself it is already in the market, there are regular testing that is being carried out for all the products that are available in the market. Of course, that FBO is of course licensed with us, so regular testing is being done by the state authorities. So I think so in that, if such kind of thing is there, like you say, it's carcinogenic or something, that would be detected in the in the testing sample that they have collected, and of course they would be penalized, or they would go through all that process of adjudication. Now, sometimes it happens that FSSAI doesn't come to know about it. So in that case, we get a lot of complaints of the consumers. As I said, the grievance cell, we get a lot of mails, and we immediately try that the state authority, they go and do enforcement, they collect samples, and they are able to detect that non-compliance in that sample. So we try and do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. Myself, Akhilesh, PhD scholar in economics. And my question is, how do regulatory costs and approval process impact the pace of innovation in the food industry, particularly for the products with public health claims?
How do they impact, you are saying?
Yes, ma'am. How do regulatory cost and approval process impact the pace of innovation in the food industry, particularly for the product with public health claims?
Yeah, so now this is an approval system, as I said. This is one of it. The other one is claim approval system that we have in place. The third one is Ayurveda Ahar. We are coming, but first time we are coming up with the approval of this conventional Ayurveda Ahar as well. So this approval system, if you are applying, that can be a conventional food, that can be a nutritive food with lot of innovation that you say that is for public health. You can do that application for the one we don't have standards, right? You can apply, we can do that deliberation, we can see whether it can be approved or not. This is number one. Number two is, like in the past we have seen that ample number of products have come for application which are the same product, only the companies were different. So all the time they don't need to come and apply to us. What we do is after that, because a lot of risk analysis has already been gone into it, a lot of clinical trials have already gone into it. So we suggested to go in the scientific panel now so that we can come up with the standards of that particular product, of that particular ingredient additive that is of high nutritive value, or a processing aid that is of high nutritive value for, of course, the public health. So we then come up with standards of such product also.
Thank you, ma'am. Now one more question.
This is going to make a big impact. The things that are good, of course, that are very good for the public health, they would be having standards in place in the upcoming time for sure.
Okay, ma'am. Now one more question. How can policies ensure that the benefits of innovative foods reach economically disadvantaged population and do not widen nutrition disparities?
I didn't get your question. You can be a little louder.
Ma'am, how can policies ensure that the benefits of innovative foods reach the economically disadvantaged population? Ma'am, marginalized population, मतलब low income population. How can innovative?
Okay, yeah. I had told you that it should be easily accessible. In my lecture also, I was saying that it should be easily accessible. I very well agree to it that these kind of innovative food that come into the market, they are, of course, they cannot be afforded by the people with some lower economy. Even if I talk about fortified food, if I take a bottle of a fortified oil with that F logo, that will be a little higher in price than the normal one. But if I talk about innovation, as I said, in the upcoming time, if that innovative food have come to us and we will try and come up with standards of that innovative food. And of course, if it is already there in the standard, then the increased rate, that increased rate should not affect the consumers. Then it should not have that level of rate. That's a constraint. I agree, and we need to come up with solution with that. That it should be afforded, because even if we go for this fortified staple food, we are trying that there are various schemes that are run by the government, by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and the government policies also, where in midday meal we are serving such fortified food because it cannot be afforded. Even the staple food cannot be afforded. We have come up with one more program, that is Zero Hunger. So there are so many programs that are already running, and that is somewhere going to help that such kind of food, that innovative, nutritious food, also food, safe food, can reach to each and every consumer in the country.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. Any more questions? You can mail me my email ID with Dr. Tejpal also. So anything that comes to your mind at a later stage also, because the whole day you had been listening to lectures and maybe you are not able to ask what you wanted to actually. So you can mail me through there, whatever is the process of sending mails to me, and I will reply to each one of that. I'll surely do that.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Actually, I have asked only one question.
Yeah.
FSI formed in 2006, right now 2025. In 19 years, only FSSAI approved only 377 products who is come under the FSSAI. And compare other countries, they at least 10,000 से भी ज़्यादा उनका प्रोडक्ट जो कि रेगुलेशन को फिट करता है, तो हमारा नंबर काफ़ी कम है. तो इसके पीछे मैम जो रीज़न है, या फिर आने वाले टाइम में क्या आप देखना चाहेंगे कि ये इंक्रीज होगा?
देखो, so I can reply in Hindi also. Okay, anyways, see, before 2017, I told you the whole process कि हमारा पहले कैसे PFA था, उसके बाद FSSAI बना, उसके बाद में स्टैंडर्ड्स आए, उसके बाद रेगुलेशन आए. जो हमारा नोवेल फूड के लिए नॉन स्पेसिफाइड फूड का रेगुलेशन है, that came into force in 2017. Before that, we never had regulations. Okay. हमारा रेगुलेशन 2017 में बना. We had only one expert committee, only one of that 5 to 6 members, which was the biggest challenge. Number one. Number two, we did not have manpower in place, जो कि अभी वो भी एड्रेस हो चुका है. उसके बाद हमारी 6 एक्सपर्ट कमिटीज बन चुकी है. Everybody has chat GPT, AI है, सब लोगों के पास में एक्सेस है, सब लोग डेटा they can collect, and people are coming up with those smart ideas. हमारे new startups, हमारे young generation आ रहे हैं, they are coming up with that. So we are growing. Now we are growing. Everybody is well versed and they are coming up with these innovative ideas, these technologies and everything. तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. हम लोगों के पास में जितना एप्लीकेशंस आते हैं, हम लोगों का ये ऑनलाइन पोर्टल बन गया है. अब इस पोर्टल में भी इतना दुनिया भर का चेंज आ रहा है कि हमारा टाइमलाइन घट गया है. तो ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं होता है जैसे पहले हुआ करता था कि देयर इज वन एप्लीकेशन व्हिच इज लाइंग फॉर 1 year or 2 years with us and we are not able to go for approval. Sometimes हम क्लिनिकल ट्रायल्स के लिए बोल देते थे क्योंकि नया एडिटिव है मार्केट में. आप भी चाहोगे कि आपका बच्चा जो भी कुछ मार्केट में खाएगा वो सेफ हो, तो हमें थोड़ा सा तो उसका एनालिसिस, सेफ्टी एनालिसिस अगर हमें करना है. हमने क्लिनिकल ट्रायल्स बोल दिया तो कई बार वो कंपनी पीछे हट जाती है कि नहीं नहीं इसमें तो इतना लग जाएगा मैडम, सो मच ऑफ मनी विल गो इनटू इट, आप हमको पोस्ट मार्केट सर्विलेंस का देके हमें टेम्पररी इसका अप्रूवल दे दो. हम लोग ये सब कुछ भी नहीं करते. तो हो सकता है उस वजह से मे बी हमें टाइम लगा. फिर कुछ गाइडलाइंस थी, कुछ क्राइटेरियाज थे जो इन प्लेस नहीं थे, जिसकी वजह से एप्लीकेशन सिस्टम में या क्या डेटा सबमिट करना है इसमें थोड़ा टाइम लग जाता था. बट अब everything is at one place. Now it is not that we are kept with so much of application. Whatever applications are coming up, we are taking up, we are coming up with the approval or rejection, whatsoever is required, we are doing that. And in the future also, I think more of the application, more of the innovation, more of those novel foods are going to come because of you smart students and the companies nowadays. And of course we will be giving approvals to that, and the number is going to increase globally. Yeah.
Ma'am, one more question. Actually, जिस तरीके से जो लाइसेंस का जो प्रोसेस है, जो FSSAI का, तो जहाँ पे भी ऑफिसर वर्ड आता है तो कहीं ना कहीं लोगों को माइंड में ये आता है, सपोज कि कोई पकौड़ा बेचने वाला है, ठीक है, तो जैसे कि उसको कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग कहते हैं फूड सेफ्टी ऑफिसर या फिर कोई और, तो उसके नाम के अंदर ऑफिसर लगा हुआ है. तो क्या ऑफिसर के जगह पे जो लाइसेंस जो लोकल एरिया में दे रहे हैं, तो क्या वो मित्र करके, जैसे कि मोदी जी ने निकालते कोई ये मित्र वो मित्र करके, जो भी डिफरेंट डिफरेंट टाइप्स के होते हैं, क्या वो सर्टिफिकेट देने में क्या वो मित्र वर्ड का यूज करके थोड़ा, क्योंकि थोड़ा सा वो फ्रेंडली हो जाएगा, वो दुकानदार के लिए भी इजी हो जाएगा, उसे लगेगा कि चलो अपना आदमी है थोड़ा सा, तो वो थोड़ा सा फ्रेंडली होकर के काम कर सकेगा. तो मे भी ये एक इनिशिएट कर सकते हैं.
देखो, जो हमारा इंस्पेक्टर राज था ना, एक्चुअली उस समय आप लोग थे नहीं PFA के टाइम पे, जो कि डंडा जिस बोलते थे कि एक ऑफिसर का होता है और ऐसे होता है, ये वाला सिस्टम अब नहीं रह गया है. फूड सेफ्टी ऑफिसर के लिए बहुत सारे मिथ लोगों ने बना लिए हैं कि अगर ये आ रहा है तो बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम हो रही. इसका जो अदर साइड अगर हम देखेंगे ना, तो बहुत सारे FSO ऐसे हैं जो हमारे सैंपल वहां पे इकट्ठा करने के लिए जाते हैं और उनके साथ इतना मिसबिहेव किया जाता है, स्पेशली अगर हमारी वुमेन एफएसओ है तो उसके लिए जाना मुश्किल हो जाता है और जाके सैंपल कलेक्ट करना मुश्किल हो जाता है। अगर आपका प्रोडक्ट ठीक है तो आपको डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं, आप सैंपल दीजिए, एवरीथिंग विल बी फाइन। सिर्फ हम ये बोल के नहीं रह सकते कि नहीं एक एफएसएसआई का ऑफिसर आया है तो वो जरूर कुछ दूसरा ही काम करेगा और वो सैंपल का एनालिसिस नहीं करेगा, ऐसा नहीं है। हमारा जो भी सैंपल जाएगा, टेस्टिंग जो भी होगी, अगर वो रेफरल में भी जाएगा तो सिर्फ फूड एनालिस्ट ही साइन करेगा, वो ही टेस्ट करेगा, जो कि सर्टिफाइड फूड एनालिस्ट है। आज की डेट में एग्जाम क्लियर करके वो आया है, जिसे पता है कि क्या पैरामीटर्स होते हैं, क्वालिटी क्या होती है, सेफ्टी क्या होती है, लेबल सबसे पहले चेक करेगा। तो हमें ना थोड़ा सा इससे बाहर निकलना पड़ेगा। जो एफएसओ जो तुम बोल रहे हो कि ऑफिसर, यार ये तो रिक्रूटमेंट रूल्स में कहीं ना कहीं मुझे अमेंडमेंट के लिए प्रपोज करना पड़ेगा कि आप उसको कुछ मित्र या कुछ फ्रेंडली वो कर दे। तो तुम लोग अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी, इफ यू आर इन दिस यूनिवर्सिटी ओनली, आप लोग प्रेजेंटेशन दे सकते हैं हम लोगों को, एफएसएसआई को, और विथ वैलिड रीजंस देना, ताकि हम कोशिश करें कि हम उसको ऊपर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में ले जा सके। ठीक है? थैंक यू।
So, ma'am, thank you very much for answering the queries of our students. So, they are delighted to have you here, and we are very much grateful to you for your time. And thank you very much again, ma'am. And we would like to have you in this campus in person in due course of time.
I wanted to meet Dr. Punya's beloved friend who is sitting on right in front of the sofa, and I wanted to meet Dr. Tejpal also. I wanted to meet all the students because I have heard so much from Dr. Tejpal about you all. I wanted to come physically, but you know, it just happened that I had a bad throat the last 5 days and I could not make it to come. But in the coming days, I surely I want to visit the campus and I want to come and interact one-on-one with each one of you.
Yes.
So hello, Dr. Sam, how are you?
Very nice to meet you, even it is virtually. It is a pleasure to meet you after some collaboration and also with your husband. And it would be very nice to meet you personally, but of course, it's also a pleasure to meet you virtually.
Yeah.
And of course, we will have an opportunity to meet you personally in another occasion soon, I believe. Thank you very much, and congratulations for your sharing, for your lecture.
Thank you.
Very interesting. And I would like also to congratulate about a book that Dr. Tejpal shared with me about all the traditional recipes you have in India and divided by each state, and we can see also the nutritional components of the recipes. Very interesting, and I will read it with very carefully. Thank you very much also for that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you so much. And I heard your lecture also, and not all, but yes, Dr. Tejpal had shared the link with me, and I heard that. I had so many queries, and I had to discuss so much with you, but we will do that.
Yes, please feel free also to write me. I think
and I hope that you should also, have some kind of collaboration with FSSAI, and we can work together.
Yes, for sure.
There are so many things we can work on.
We will arrange that, of
That's
course. And please feel free also to write me. You have my email, please. Feel free.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that we could not meet you in person, but we will surely plan it very soon, all of us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, namaste.
So thank you very much, ma'am. Again, thanks a lot for joining this session.
Thank you, Dr. Tejpal. Congratulations, you are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks. Thank you.
Right. I will log out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you may please.
Yeah. Thank you.
Guys, few more minutes. Please sit down. Sit down, please. As we come to the close of another insightful Gyan program, let's take a quick walk through the ideas and inspiration that shaped today's discussions. We begin the day by diving into the world of natural sweeteners, exploring how the growing consumer preference for natural and clean labeled foods is reshaping the food industry. From safety perceptions to sustainability and sensory challenges, the lecture reminded us that sweetness in the modern world isn't about taste, it's about trust, transparency, and technological balance. Following that, we had an extremely informative session on integrated planning and governance for food security through fortification by Dr. Mona Dugal. The presentation beautifully highlighted how multi-sectoral convergence linking health, food, education, agriculture, and community systems can make large-scale food fortification both feasible and impactful. The Haryana demonstration project and the Multiply Fortified Salt study stood as strong examples of science meeting governance to address anemia and micronutrient deficiencies sustainably. Post lunch, we shifted gears into a classroom discussion on food innovation and food neophobia, where ideas, opinions, and experiences truly came alive. The conversation reminded us that food innovation is not only about creating something new, but also about understanding consumer psychology, habits, and the hesitation that often accompanies change. And finally, we concluded the academic sessions with a thought provoking lecture on public health and innovative foods, underlining how the two are deeply intertwined. Innovation not just as a tool for market advancement, but as a means to promote better nutrition, accessibility, and long term wellness. It was interesting to learn about FSSAI's strong regulatory framework and the emerging innovations like plant based foods, cultured meat, and precision fermentation that are redefining the food landscape. Altogether, today's session gave us a holistic view from ingredient innovation to integrated systems, from consumer behavior to public health strategies, all pointed toward one shared goal, a healthier and more sustainable food future. With that, we officially close the session for day 6. Thank you all. Thank you to our distinguished speakers, participants for yet another day of meaningful learning and